So if you ever hear whispers in your house or feel eyes watching you from the dark, remember Anna. Remember the girl locked away whose story nearly vanished into silence. Because ghosts don't always haunt out of anger. Sometimes they haunt out of a desperate need to be remembered.
I never thought the old house would ever be mine. Growing up, my father always spoke of it as though it were more than a place. It was a burden, a weight carried by generations before him. When he passed away, the keys came to me, clinking cold in a small metal box the lawyer pressed into my hands. The house stood on the edge of a quiet town, away from traffic and noise, as if it preferred to be forgotten. It had been in the family for nearly a century, built by my grandfather's father, and every layer of paint and every creak in the floorboards seemed to whisper history. As I pushed open the front door for the first time in years, the smell of dust and wood rot rushed over me. I paused in the hallway, staring at the old photographs that lined the walls. Stern faces of men in black and white portraits, women in stiff dresses, eyes sharp and unblinking. And in every picture, one thing was the same, the way none of them seemed to smile. I remember being a boy, tugging at my father's sleeve, asking him why we never lived here, even though the house was ours. He would always mutter the same thing. "Some doors are better left closed, John. Some rooms are better left unseen." At the time, I thought he was just being dramatic, the way adults sometimes are. But standing there, decades later, the words didn't feel like a warning. They felt like a curse. The first few nights in the house were restless. I'd chosen one of the upstairs bedrooms, a place with faded wallpaper and a window that overlooked the front yard. At night, the silence pressed against me. I'd wake to the sound of something shifting in the walls, as if the house itself breathed with me. The air was damp and heavy, carrying the faint smell of mildew. I told myself it was only an old building settling, nothing to be afraid of. But in the deepest part of my mind, I knew I wasn't alone. On the fourth night, I was unpacking boxes in the living room when I noticed something strange. Behind the tall bookshelf that stood against the far wall, there was a faint draft. Curious, I pulled the shelf aside. The wallpaper behind it was peeling, but more importantly, the wall itself sounded hollow. I knocked again. Thud. Thud. The sound echoed in a way it shouldn't have. A shiver ran down my spine. My father's warning came back to me. "Some doors are better left closed, John." I should have stopped there, but curiosity is a dangerous thing. I fetched a hammer and began chipping away at the plaster. With each strike, the wall gave way, coughing up clouds of dust. Beneath it, a wooden frame appeared, old and brittle. After an hour of work, I revealed the outline of what seemed to be a doorway, long sealed shut. My heart pounded. My hands trembled as I pulled away the last boards. Behind it was a narrow staircase, spiraling down into darkness. The smell that wafted up was old, damp, and strangely sweet, like flowers that had rotted long ago. I stood at the edge, flashlight in hand, staring into the void. Every instinct screamed at me to close it back up, to pretend I hadn't found it, but something stronger pulled me forward. The need to know what my father had hidden all his life. I stepped onto the first creaking stair. The air grew colder, pressing against my skin like icy fingers. My beam of light cut through the dust, revealing spiderwebs strung across the narrow passage. Each step echoed too loudly, as if the house was listening. By the time I reached the bottom, my shirt was clinging to my back with sweat. A single door stood before me, heavy and scarred with age. Strange markings, scratches almost like claw marks, marred its surface. I pressed my hand against it. The wood was unnaturally cold. For a long moment, I hesitated. My father's voice echoed in my head again. "Some doors are better left closed, John." But I had already come this far. With one last push, the door creaked open, groaning like it hadn't been touched in decades. A rush of stale air poured out, carrying with it the weight of secrets buried too deep. And for the first time, I saw it. The hidden room.
The beam of my flashlight shook in my trembling hand as I stepped into the hidden room. Dust swirled in the stale air, and the temperature dropped so sharply I could see my breath. At first, it looked like time itself had been sealed away here. The walls were lined with faded wallpaper, peeling in long strips. An iron bed frame stood in the corner, its mattress collapsed into itself. Beside it sat a small wooden desk, covered in a thick blanket of dust. But what unsettled me most wasn't the decay, it was the feeling, like the moment you walk into a room where someone has just left. The air carried a heaviness, as if the memory of whoever had once lived here still lingered. I shined the light across the room and noticed drawings on the far wall. At first glance, they looked like child's scribbles, stick figures, animals, trees. But as I drew closer, I realized they weren't simple doodles. The faces were distorted, eyes too wide, mouths twisted in silent screams. Some figures were crossed out violently, scratched over until the plaster beneath was exposed. My throat tightened. Who had drawn these? On the desk lay a stack of journals. I wiped the dust off the top one and opened it carefully. The pages were brittle, yellowed with age. The handwriting inside was shaky, uneven, as though written by someone desperate to be heard. "I don't understand why I must stay here. Mother says it's for my own good. Father says people wouldn't understand. But I hear them above me. I hear them laugh and live. Why can't I?" My stomach turned. This wasn't just a hidden room, it was a prison. I flipped through more pages. The entries grew darker. The writer described loneliness, the sound of footsteps above, and voices that never came for them. Sometimes they spoke of anger, other times despair. One line stopped me cold. "If anyone finds this, know that I was here. Know that I was real. They want me forgotten, but I am part of this family too." I slammed the journal shut, my heart racing. A hidden family member? Someone locked away down here? Cut off from the world? I scanned the room again and spotted a trunk at the foot of the bed. Its rusty lock had long since snapped, and with a little force, I pried it open. Inside were clothes, small, worn dresses, shoes too tiny for an adult, and underneath them, bundles of letters tied together with fraying ribbon. I untied one bundle. The letters were written in a neat, delicate hand. They weren't addressed to anyone. They were confessions, written as though the writer had no one else to speak to. "They say I am cursed. They say I must not be seen. But I only ever wanted to be loved." My hands shook as I placed the letters back. A weight pressed on my chest, the realization settling over me. My family, my father, his parents, had locked someone down here, a child, hidden from the world. I turned my light toward the far corner and froze. Scratched into the wall, deep gouges that tore into the wood beams, were words, "Let me out." The letters stretched high and uneven, carved with desperation and fury. I stumbled back, my shoulder hitting the desk. My flashlight flickered, and for a moment the room plunged into darkness. When the light returned, I could have sworn something had shifted. The air pressed heavier now, thick with a presence I couldn't explain. My skin prickled as if unseen eyes were watching. I swallowed hard and whispered into the silence, "Who were you?" Of course, there was no answer, only the distant sound of water dripping somewhere beyond the walls. I forced myself to sit at the desk, flipping through another journal, needing to know more. This entry was dated near the end. They promised they would come for me. They promised I wouldn't be alone forever. But the days blur into nights, and I hear nothing now. If this is the end, let whoever finds me remember that I lived, even if they never let me truly live. My vision blurred as tears stung my eyes. This wasn't just a hidden room. It was a tomb of memories, of cruelty, of someone erased from our family's history. And deep down, I feared I hadn't even uncovered the darkest part yet.